Welcome to a Scholastic Parent Briefing. Some of you have been to a few of these before. I've recognised a few faces, others of you haven't. This year the parent briefings are very sharp and snappy, so we're keeping them to half an hour total, 20 minutes of hearing from the speakers and me asking questions, and then 5-10 minutes at the end for your questions. And this particular one is focusing on the interplay between state education and the independent sector, whether you should keep your child in a state school till 8, 11, 16, or some other way of organising it, and switching between the systems. So I've got a fantastic panel to discuss this with. Alice Phillips, who's Headmistress of St Catherine's School in Bramley, and Ben Evans, who's Head of Windlesham House School in Sussex. But before we hear from the panel, I want to hear a little bit from the audience. So could you put your hand up if you have a child who's currently in the state system? Okay, great. And could you put your hand up if you went to a state school yourself? Great, thank you very much. And could you put your hand up if you went to an independent school yourself? Oh, some people put their hand up twice. That's very interesting. So lots of switchers in the audience. Great. Okay, let's start with you both. I'm going to ask you the same question about your schools. A rough percentage that you recruit from state schools.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'd say we have each year about 25% of our children will come from state schools at any age.
Good afternoon. At St Catherine's, where we would recruit from state primaries into the senior school, it can be anything from 15 to 25%, depending year on year. We're surrounded by lots of good primary schools. Great.
And could we just, because I wasn't terribly clear about what kind of schools you both are. I mean, terrible introductions, I'm afraid. It's been quite a long day. Ben, do you want to explain sort of the kind of school you are and roughly what age people come in from primary schools?
Yeah, of course. So Windlesham is a prep school. We start at reception, year 4, and go right the way through to year 8, 13 plus. And we have children join us at every stage of the school. So we will obviously have an intake into reception. We have an intake into year 7, and that's a big intake when there is a natural break from primary schools. But we also take children in it, as I say, at every year group. And a number of children will come from state primary schools.
So St Catherine's is 2 schools in one, a through school, but also there's a good deal of autonomy from my head of prep. We start at 4+ in reception. We have an intake of an additional class in year 3, so going into Key Stage 2. And then at the senior school stage, we have another intake of about another 2/3 to make a year group of about 88 to 92. And then there is an intake for a few at year 9, and then again at the 6th form.
Great, so you've got a real kind of like breadth of experience of students transferring from different systems.
Lots.
Okay, so that sets the framework for what will follow. Let's start with primary schools and children in London primaries. I mean, it was the case 30 years ago that London primaries were kind of avoided by a lot of parents, but they're now generally thought to be pretty good. Have you noticed a rise, therefore, in state school recruitment from London?
Yeah, we have, and I think primary schools are good. The teaching and learning is solid, but COVID's had a huge impact, and I think lockdowns had a big impact. And now parents are looking for that extra. So it's not just about the English, maths and science. What can we offer that perhaps a primary school can't? And at Windlesham, we've got 70 acres. We have the extended day. We have the co-curricular program. So in amongst the English and maths and science lessons, we can offer so much more. And I think now, after, as I say, after those lockdown years, when really opportunities were so limited, it's now about what can we give our children and where can they be best suited. And so often we will have children who will join us into year 4 or year 5 from London and absolutely embrace the busy life of a boarding prep school. And it's really, when the lessons finish, school continues, and that's where the added value lies.
How about you, Alice?
Well, I would absolutely echo all of that, the same sort of setting, not quite as many acres, but certainly enough to be going on with. I think I would particularly say it's the length of the day. that is very attractive to people. And obviously, if people coming to me, South of Guildford, are relocating, and there's that, if you're making these decisions all as one, then the relocation, the investment in that and the investment in the school and finding the perfect right school for you is very important. But certainly the longer day, the extracurricular activities, the smaller classes, the people who taught through lockdown and know what the different age groups missed and therefore know exactly what they're trying to make up is important.
Okay, so I'm going to turn to Alice now to focus a bit on senior school entry from primary schools.
Yeah.
Obviously, prep schools, and we'll come to this in a second, are very good at preparing children for independent schools and for senior school entry.
Mm-hmm.
But what about how good is your school assessing state school applicants and distinguishing them from their expensively educated prep school peers?
Well, going back to what was said about the quality of primary school education, the skill is in how you assess. So it's lovely to have a super duper prepared young person who gets 80, 90% in my entrance exams, but I'm not really interested in that. We've got 7 years to A-level. I'm always looking for potential. I'm a little bit old-fashioned in that I set handwritten papers. I don't do any of these online adaptive things because I want to see the child who finds a question in maths that maybe they didn't cover that topic, they can then just move to the next one rather than being trundled off down to lesser questions. And so I'm really looking for signs of potential on what I know they've seen. So I probably take a very circumspect view, frankly, of all the applicants to check that I'm not disadvantaging anybody. And it's hugely time-consuming, but my team are absolutely committed to it. And if we see handwritten papers, we can see if methodology is right and maybe a calculation is wrong in maths, or there's some vocabulary that the child isn't confident that he or she spelt properly and lines through and then puts another word, but we can see that the vocabulary was there. You see what I'm saying? So you're actually looking to assess. And I would say that the applicants we have from state primary schools for year 7, which is my principal intake, are well prepared. They're not as practiced in the art of doing the papers, but sometimes that can actually be an advantage. They're not over-practiced. So I would say I keep an eye very clearly on which school a young person has come from. And I think when it comes to getting reports from schools, state primary schools will charge you for a special reference. Don't pay it, just send the year 5 reports, because you get a very comprehensive end-of-year report from most schools, and talk to us in person.
That's an incredibly interesting comment. So let's drill in a bit for both of you then on children arriving from state schools. There are differences in the curriculum. I mean, the independent schools make a great play about the fact that they're free to do what they want. Do you find that state school children need to catch up? Is the pace different?
I think what I would say is that most importantly, we get to know the families, we get to know the children. They'll come to us, tour the school, really understand that this is the school that they want to come to and understand our ethos. They'll come for a taster day, we get to know the children, they get to know us. So by the time children arrive with us, we know them, we know the families, we know the children, and we want that transition to be as seamless as possible. School should be fun, school should be enjoyable. We want them to have lots of fun at school, and that's the most important thing. Alongside that, our curriculums aren't that different. We follow the national curriculum, and especially at the primary age, the English, maths, science, history topics will all be very familiar. But we have smaller class sizes and we have staff available to support. So any gaps we quickly identify, and it's about filling those gaps. It's about making sure the children feel comfortable within their learning, feel comfortable within the busier pace of life. Now, our school day is longer. We need it to be longer because we have an awful lot to fit in.
We're doing school day in a moment. So,
right,
sorry
come
about
back
that.
but as far as the academic side of school life is concerned, there will be challenges. Perhaps if they join us into Year 6, Latin might be a challenge. Languages, and they will have been studying French and Spanish from Year 3. But again, we can fill those gaps, and it certainly shouldn't be a concern or worry, because we want children to very quickly become and adapt to our curriculum and our lessons and our learning. And we'll put everything in place to support that.
I mean, Latin is a really interesting one. I taught at Windlesham a long time ago, so long ago that Ben was probably still at school. And in those days, I mean, there really was a lot of Latin. So if you came in at 11 and you hadn't done it, you were immediately in the non-Latin group, which was not a place you necessarily wanted to be. So has that changed? I mean,
yeah, that has changed. We don't have a non-Latin group, but we've expanded our language program. So from the early years, we have our world languages program, moving into French and Spanish, classical civilization in year 5, which is history, lots of storytelling, and then Latin from year 6. But coming into year 6, there wouldn't be an issue. Coming into year 7 from a state primary, we would be able to get children up to the standard required in Latin very quickly, and that's just by careful teaching and careful nurture.
Alice has something to say about Latin as well, I think.
Well, only insofar as in the girls' system, I think that's something you'll find generally. You'll get some specialist teaching at the top of a girls' prep school, so we would be doing a lesson a week, 30 minutes of Latin in year 6. We have an entry point for about 8 students in year 5, and I do find we get some very strong candidates from state primaries at that point. Now, that's a big decision because your child is enjoying the primary school and wants to be at the top of the primary school and enjoy all the importance that comes with that, the roles of responsibility. But if you're looking to move sooner, that's a good point because 5 is time to arrive and settle and 6 is time to be ready to be assessed, and you will get those languages at that point. Equally, if you are looking to move at 13 to my school, there's an ab initio Spanish and Latin class because we want to really make sure that those young people get that opportunity. And I think I'm not alone in that. I think there's so many different schools and different personalities of schools and different programs. You will spend a lot of time on websites to start with and curriculum pages and visiting, but it will be worth your while because you'll see the questions you have answered, and every school is different.
So now we turn to the length of the school day. I mean, I moved from Windlesham to a London day school, and I couldn't get over the length of the school day. This is an independent school where literally, like, it was all over by about 3:15, and it was absolutely staggering. So schools outside London, particularly, seem to want to occupy vast amounts of your child's time. I kind of curious, if you're moving from a primary school, this will be a big difference. I mean, a really big difference. And how well prepared are children for these very lengthy days and these preps at school at about sort of 5:30 before they have supper?
Right. Well, we have a range of options really within our school day. So we are a day school, but we are also a boarding school. So our boarding model will be very different. But if you were coming as a day pupil from a state school, our day will start slightly earlier. But it's packed full. It's a busy, fun day. I don't think, other than feeding time, so we give children a snack in the morning, a really good lunch, a snack in the afternoon, which is absolutely essential to keep them going through the day. They won't really notice the length of the day, but we can finish at 4:30 at the end of the teaching day. But that would mean that there would be other things that they don't do. But then we have our little tea, another snack, we have activities, we have prep, and there are various finish times, so they can do activities and finish at 5:30, prep, finish at 6 or 6:30. And what I always say to parents who are worried about the length of the school day, just see how they get on. Perhaps finish at 4:30 if they come to us in year 3 or 4, it's a long day. And then as they build their resilience, they build their stamina, and actually it's the children themselves will say, I want to stay, I want to do fencing, I want to do the swimming club, I want to do football, fun, science, or whatever it might be. And the same goes with boarding. It's so often the children's choice. Can I please board? Because then I can do even more at school.
Yeah. And is Cats and More kind of school as well?
Yeah, I mean, I think at senior level, your daughter is, I speak of girls, is older, and each key stage comes with a setback, doesn't it? I mean, I'm sure you've experienced this business when suddenly they step up a bit and they're tired for the first term and then they get into the zone. At senior school level, they are just, we find, delighted to have everything in one place, and so are parents. So instead of you worrying about, be it the fond relative or the neighbour or the au pair or whoever you're asking to do it for you while you're working, having the car for that person to drive to the ballet, to the music, to this, to that, and then they're off sick, and how do you get them there? It's all here. And the children love that because they move from thing to thing to thing. If anything, we have to protect them from themselves because they overcommit, but that's fine because you can deal with that. That's a good life lesson, and they want to be on site. The last coach leaves us for the day students at 5:30 The coach that goes to London at the end of the week for weekly boarders goes at 6 on Friday after symphony orchestra. So there's, you wrap the week according to the age. The weekly boarding, it just seamlessly goes on through the week.
Yeah, I mean, if you're like me and my friends, the carting from thing to thing to thing really becomes quite a kind of draining aspect of having children aged kind of, 7 to 14, 15. It's hard work, isn't it? And you lift a lot of that burden.
Yeah, no, we do. And I think because our days are busy, it does mean then that weekends are free. So rather than having to go all over the place at weekends or feeling guilty because you're not going all over the place at weekends, you can feel happy that they've had a busy week. They've managed to do everything they want to do at a really high level, or an enjoyable level, wherever you want them to be, whether it's they're working towards their Lambda exams or music or high-class tennis coaching or just fun football. They've done it during the week. The weekends are then family time.
I'm going to make the opposite case as well, which is that London does have amazing after-school activities and clubs as well, to an incredibly high level. So you don't, and we are slightly, we're presenting this question about moving from the state to the independent system with a couple of heads of schools outside London, but we could have had a London head on the panel as well. We should have had, really, I think, because you're not necessarily choosing, in making this choice, you're not necessarily choosing a boarding school or a school outside London. But let's move. I want to turn to Ben now and talk particularly about prep schools. So there's a really interesting thing about, obviously, primary schools finish at 11. A lot of senior schools in the room here recruit at 13, though London schools that's less true. What's the value of a prep school for managing the transition into a senior school? Why would you go from a primary to a prep school before you go to senior school?
Yeah, some parents will say, what is the point of coming to Windlesham, for example, for just years 7 and 8 before we move on to senior schools? Well, there's a lot of point. Your child will be 12 and 13 and at the top of the school. So at a time when, if they were at their senior school, they would be the youngest. They are now having the opportunities of being the oldest in the school, those positions of responsibility, that self-confidence that brings, that high self-esteem, which is so important as children are going through those difficult years, can be difficult transition years. And also we can prepare them academically and socially for that move into a senior school. And of course it also opens up the range of senior schools you can go to, because there will be some that only start at 13 into year 9, and therefore by coming to us for 2 years we can manage that process with you. We can talk to you, we can advise on which schools would be best for your child once we get to know them, which we do very quickly, and then it opens up, and it can open up a whole world of senior schools that maybe you hadn't otherwise considered. And when they move to their senior school into year 9, we know that they are ready because they outgrow us. By the end of the summer term of year 8, they are ready to move on, and we're all pleased that we've done our job. They hit the ground running into year 9.
Okay, I'm going to last question from me for the time being. Actually, there's a question there, so let's go straight to the question there, and then we'll have another question.
Is this on? Yeah. If you have a child that comes to you at 11, my understanding is that there are a lot of pre-tests for a 13 entry. How do you navigate that if you don't know the child?
Yeah, that's a brilliant question.
A very good question. Pre-tests. Yes, we think about pre-tests a lot, and I'm sure you'll all be thinking about pre-tests. So there will be some schools who require that pre-testing to be done in year 6, and it's round about now, so it's the middle of November, towards the end of November. But a number of schools are now moving their pre-test to year 7 because they're realizing actually they're not getting the best look at the children in year 6 because they're not ready. Academically, they're immature. It's just not a good time to be able to assess a child for year 9 entry. So they are moving that pre-test to year 7, thankfully. And we have such good relationships with the senior schools that we send children on to. We have, on average, about 25 children join us into year 7, and we find them senior schools. So we will have that discussion, and then I'll ring up the heads, the registrars, and say, I've got this wonderful child for you. let's talk about how we're going to manage that process. So I wouldn't worry about the pre-testing.
Though, yeah, Alice is going to have a comment on this, but before she does, just to reinforce, there can be a sort of nightmare scenario where you're having to choose senior schools and prep schools at the same time, and that really can be incredibly stressful for parents.
Well, I'm known to being a little bit controversial about this. I actually think the pre-test should be disposed of as a ghastly thing. I don't think you need to test a child until the year before, the year they're due to move school, because we want to know where they actually stand. And it's become a little bit competitive between the schools to bag candidates, to be perfectly honest. I really am putting it out there now. And it makes our lives very tricky because you are, as you say, you're being assessed way before you've even settled into the new school. So in the girls' system and some of the co-ed systems, and I've noticed it creeping around, and I'm sure you have too, the year 7 start point for senior schools is becoming increasingly universal. It always has been for girls. There is that thing which we all know about the different ages and stages by which girls and boys get to maturity. It all levels out very nicely by the time we get up to 18 and A-level and what have you. But I would say young girls coming to us, the converse argument really, will come to us at year 7 and 8 when they're still relatively young girls and children, and there is a little bit more of a period of being young and not being completely fraught with the difficulties of life, and we get them when they're children, we get to know them, we get to know you, and then we hit the wall of hormones together as allies. And they come out beautiful at the end. But, you know, it's a consideration for girls. And again, I'm talking from one particular angle, but I believe passionately that you shouldn't test a child 2 years before the senior school she's going to attend.
Okay, so I'm going to be throwing questions asking you for questions in a second. Last question from me. What about moves the other way? If you had to pick an age to be privately educated and you couldn't do the whole thing, which age would you choose? And please don't just say your most expensive years in your school or something.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you know, I looked at this rather carefully when thinking what to say on the to you all. I think it's down to your child and your experience, where you live, what's around you for choice. So I live in an area where there's a magnificent sixth form college, which is something I have to compete with. I have numbers of people who say, no, Mrs. Phillips, I only have the investment potential up to GCSE. You give me I would say I give a rough cut diamond at GCSE and a finely polished faceted gem at A-level. But other places can do that. So there will be one or two for whom that sixth form is part of their plan. There'll be others for whom coming to, I would say, is the top end of primary a good place to stay in the state because it's become so much better? I don't think I can give you a straightforward this or this answer. It is down to you.
Yeah, go on. What would you pick?
For me?
Yeah, that's you.
I think infant is where I would stay in the state because it's likely to be very walkable from your home, very good, very solid, very grounded, a bit of co-ed in the mix there for me. And then after that, I would say make your choice, decide you're going to make that investment, start your saving plan. If you invest in futures and you become an expert in them, you can do very well.
Ben?
Well, what I would say is that everything that we do at Windlesham and at any prep school, you're building foundations. And you have those solid foundations, then you are giving your child the skills for life. And what we do is we build character. We build social skills. And that's by providing those opportunities and experiences. So I would say give your child that great start in their education. Foster that lifelong love of learning, that desire to learn, that passion for learning, and all the other skills and opportunities that come with schools like ours, and then they can cope with all sorts of things later on.
Okay, so are there some burning questions in the audience? Or even just casual?
I've got a microphone. I've got a child not a million miles away from me who's joined up writing at the age of 4, plays chess at 5. In the recent holidays, decided to learn the 99 times table just for fun. And I'm wondering whether do I keep him at my local state primary school, which is, to be fair, in my view, the best school in the borough, private included. It's a school called Charles Dickens Primary School. It's a research school in Southwark. Or should I be moving him to a prep school at this age? And the reason why I say that is, although he was learning all these things, at that same time at school he was learning how to count up to 10 and back. bearing in mind he's teaching himself the 99 times table.
I think I come back to my original point. Everybody's child is different. Every household's approach to education is different. You may be a numbers family, maybe have walls lined with books. You will know if you feel that your child has greater potential than is being drawn from him or her at that stage, and you will know where you want to invest. You could argue that he will be less stressed and oppressed by endless pre-tests and exams, etc., and you might make that as a quality decision. But looking at your eyes, I can tell that you're going to make the right decision. Because you care. Yeah, exactly. And you'll talk to people too. What I would say at this point is a bit of a homily about, whenever I talk to parents these days, I find myself, because I'm getting old enough to be a grandparent, fortunately not quite yet, she's only 23, at least she hasn't told me anything I should worry about at the moment. But joking apart though, we live in an era where there's a lot of people telling you on the internet what to think about schools, what to think about education, and so on and so forth. I would only take comment or advice from somebody you know personally and who you know is a real person. I would be trusting your own gut instinct like we used to have to do in the old days. I would not go to any of the online fora because they're almost invariably populated by people who might have had a bad experience or a super good one. I would go and visit and saturate, go to the taster days we all offer, and then make your decision.
What would you say are the main considerations, both from the school's perspective and also from a parental one, of potentially moving a child in the middle of their primary education from state to independent in order to hopefully maximize, the forward journey?
Yeah, absolutely. So you would look to move because you want more for your child. So the most important thing is that you visit the school, you talk to the head, you talk to the teachers, you get to know them, and you soak up the atmosphere. Because as parents, you are the only ones that know whether that school is the right one for your child. Because there are lots of very, very good schools out there, but we all do things slightly differently. We all have a slightly different approach to the education, and you need to know whether that approach is going to be the best one for your child. And then you need to say, right, if I'm going to move my child, are there benefits to that? And be absolutely certain those benefits will outweigh the positives of staying where they are with their current friendship group. Now, I would always say that if you are thinking about it, then there is clearly a reason why you're thinking about it. Go out, have a look, talk to the staff, and you get your best impression, really, by looking at how happy the children are, how engaged they are, how purposeful the school day is, and the passion and the experience of the teachers. Are they providing that education that you aspire to for your child? But as parents, you're the best suited, and it goes back to your question too, really. You know your child, and just see what the schools are offering.
I mean, to a follow-up question from that, I think that's a really fascinating question. And the thing that I think independent schools often miss about state schools is that they are local communities, and that you know all the parents in the primary school, and everyone lives close by, and therefore leaving that is quite a big deal. And you will have to justify it to your friends, amongst other things, and to your neighbours. So you're stepping into something that's far less known. And that one of the obvious questions is how welcoming will the parents be in your school? How good are they at coping with incomers? And where do they all come from? And how does it work?
Well, I would say at Windlesham, we're an inclusive community. We are a community, and we embrace anyone who comes into the school. And the children themselves love to have new friends. Right from a little girl in reception who will act as the school's ambassador and greet every visitor that I bring to the school. The children themselves really do welcome new friends, new children into their classes. So I certainly wouldn't worry about that. Again, look for a school that has a parents' association, or friends of the school. Just ask what happens, what sort of community events are there, because it is so important that you do involve yourself as much as you want to in the school community, because then you feel invested, you feel a sense of belonging, and for your children to know that you're involved, you know people there, that belonging to the community is absolutely crucial for them to then thrive and flourish in their new environment.
Children will always find their tribe through the extracurricular activities. They'll be in a class which they're allocated to. By the time they get to A-level, they will sort of have chosen it. When they get to university, they'll have chosen everything. So their soulmates are going to come most likely through the extracurricular. And at that point, it really doesn't matter who you are or where you're from. If you're in that, in my case, lacrosse team, netball team, string quartet, baby orchestra, beginner brass group, advanced dance class, whatever it is, those become the people you go to lunch with on that day, or the people you hang out with after school. And then before you know where you are, you've got a good mix of friends. A friendship group by the time you leave a senior school should look something like 16 young people from all sorts of different bits of the school who remain, and frankly, when they send me the photographs back, turn up at your wedding, are the godchildren of your godparents of your children, and on it goes. I mean, it is that much a question of finding friends for life. And I would say where you come from and who you are at St Catherine's wouldn't make a difference at all. Well, not at all.
And on that note, no, I'm sorry, but we're really sticking to our timetable. We have finished. That's the end of this keynote. The next one, the last one of today, is at 3:30 with an amazing mix of heads. Richard Backhouse from Berkhamsted, Ben Jones, Director of Partnerships at Allains, and Jane Lunnan, Head of Allains, Tom Arbuthnot, Deputy Head Partnerships at Eton, and Julie Robinson of the ISC, talking about how independent schools serve the whole community and give back. That will be a really interesting talk with some very eminent schools speaking. Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much.